Minna Sorvari from Finland, and I participated in the workshop about creating culture of participation at schools. It was a very interesting workshop because, as we have seen all together, that schools are actually one of the places where kids from all the background get together, and they have equal opportunities to learn about everything. And that should include also the political participation, how to be active members in society. So we were thinking there, the actors who are in the school. So there's obviously first students. And that's why we made a recommendation that the students should be involved in the decision making through introducing or supporting a framework in educational institutions such as student councils and other student initiatives that enable then and ensure the engagement of the students to be one of the decision makers there. So that it's not all about other people, but also the students are there. And critical for that would be creating some kind of legal framework for student councils, and then also training of teachers to understand the role of it. And then also there could be some guidelines for students or participants in student councils so that they know what they're doing. Then the second actor there is obviously the teachers or other educators who are there. So we made a recommendation about having citizenship education at all the levels of the education system in the curriculums, so that people will learn as from the little kid until they are grown up, what is it to participate. And this would be done with using non-formal learning methodologies in order not to have it too old-fashioned, if you could say, but have it just engaging and youth-friendly in a way. And also the CULT committee is invited to advance the citizenship education discussion in the European Parliament, so that we can get also the European Parliament to be part of it. And key actions for this would be to develop a common guideline for citizenship education in Europe, so commonly for everyone, and then training the teachers to teach citizenship education and train them also about the non-formal learning methods, so that they have tools to provide the understanding for everybody, knowledge, skills and attitudes towards better society pretty much. And then this process must be also monitored and assessed, and also the students should be included in the feedback phase. That feedback would come from different sources so that we can get the process better. And then one of the least actors, which is maybe not so much present at the moment, is to include also like different forms of civic engagement, such as volunteering, in order to simulate the culture of participation at schools, so that awareness, like what you can do there, could become also from other sources than just teachers. There can be, for example, cooperation with NGOs and other actors in the community. And then also that people would get study points of it. That people shouldn't, like the students shouldn't be punished and discouraged to participate, but then if they will get something good for it, it will show that actually the school system supports them. And that's why we were thinking of including the study points.
My name is Martin Meyer, and I'm here today representing the world organization of the Scout movement. Over the past few days, me and my colleagues have been closely working in the second workshop with the fifth Riga recommendation. The fifth recommendation states that by implementing transparent, sustainable and collaborative structures and providing financial support, authorities on the local, regional and national level should ensure full participation of youth NGOs in decision-making processes of policies that affect young people. Our main task was to define key action points of how this recommendation can be reached. And the first recommendation that we have come up with states that it is very important that there is financial, organisational and informational support for youth NGOs to participate in decision-making structures. Why is this exactly important? Because without financial support, how can a youth NGO actively participate in making decisions? If you have to pay to get to a venue to make these decisions. And we have closely evaluated the financial issues that really are there, and we have come up with that Key Action 3 of the Erasmus Plus programme actually is a very good start into implementing this recommendation. Furthermore, there needs to be support from an organisational point of view, which means that there must be a framework in place that ensures that these youth NGOs the government is working with are democratic youth NGOs and that there are no borders that prevent them from actively participating in these decision-making processes. And finally, which I think is one of the most important issues, is the informational support. Well, what does that actually mean? Informational support means that most youth NGOs these days, it doesn't matter if it is on a local, on a regional, national or even on an EU level, do not have a single key point where they can talk to within the government. But how can a youth organisation participate in a dialogue, in decision making, in policy making, if it doesn't have anyone to talk to? And putting this in a historical setting, I would say this direct line is as important as the line between the United States of America and the Russian Federation in the Cold War. Secondly, we think that youth NGOs should be involved in the making of policies that affect young people from the very beginning till the completion of the policy process within a cross-sectorial setting at all levels. Well, what does this mean? From the start to the completion means that youth NGOs should be involved from the agenda setting to the follow-up of every single process. And I also spoke about cross-sectorial, quite a fancy word, but what does it mean? What does it say? Ultimately, for us, cross-sectorial means that youth issues are not only dealt with in the youth department of a state, but young people care in issues such as legal, economic and health. These are issues young people today in Europe care about, and I think we all have to have a say in them. Finally, our third recommendation is that all youth should have the right to be represented in these decision-making processes, not only through national youth councils, but in any and all relevant and representative youth NGO. And this has to be regulated by legislation. So why is it important that everyone actually participates or is represented by someone? Well, the better the representation of young people, the higher is the democratic legitimacy of the decision or of the policy that is produced, and ultimately increases the democratic value. And I would say it really fits together in the democratic processes of Europe today. And the last bit we've come up with was the legislation part. So why is legislation always so important? Well, because this process needs to be sustainable. It can't end tomorrow or in a year or in 4 years' time when the government changes. It needs to be a process that continues, and that's why there needs to be legislation. Because the voice of the youth not only matters today, it matters tomorrow and the day after.
During these days, we focused our attention about youth work and the crucial role for fostering political participation. For us, it's based on values of diversity, human rights, democracy and critical thinking. So we believe that the role will be played by European Commission member states that should provide to youth sector the necessary resources such as operational and project funding, but also support structure, network and training. And with the formal social and political, to obtain the formal social and political recognition of youth work and formal learning. This is the theoretical part. Then we defined for that point something linked with the development of system of standard qualification and certification for youth worker. And we strongly believe that it's important to establish youth work as a path of study at university. We also discussed about the recognition of skills developed through no formal education. For example, in Europe, a lot of associations are working on this issue to create as a sort of youth pass, but also promoting, like with university credits, ACTS. We strongly believe that it's important to create special diplomas for school, for traineeship, that should include and certify the volunteer works and competences and skills. But we believe a universal system of to certify these competencies gained through no formal education, no formal learning, youth work. Then we focus our attention about the possibility to build a structure funding for youth work. To introduce, to do this, we have to introduce legal parameters for funding youth work. We have to have a special budget line and application system. Then we have to ensure that the criteria for selection are different to the different association to all levels for projects that are supporting the political participation of youth. And then we need also the help of the administration with a specific youth department. Then we also put the focus on recommendation number 9, that is European institutions and member states are encouraged to establish cross-sectoral initiative and long-term partnership at all levels with a young worker and non-governmental organization in order to transfer knowledge and develop political participation competencies of all young people. Linked with that point, we focus the attention about the awareness of rising activities. So we'd like to introduce an annual European Day for Political Participation on one side, and on the other one establish a system of award for organizations that have in collaboration in the field of youth political participation. Then it's important to mapping cross-sectoral partnership. So on one side, setting up a database based on research and consultation to map young organization and public initiative on both European and national level, and setting partnership by the identification of relevant partner for cooperation via public calls and the provision and to provide them the relevant resources such as funding and training. Then we'd like to fix a regular meeting for communicating needs and knowledge. So create a framework for regular meeting between representative of youth and government to exchange knowledge and best practices about the implementation of youth policies in different member states. And then to do that, in order to do this, we believe that it's important to encourage member states to involve the economic and social committees. I think that it's all. I am really happy and glad to be part of this great process, and I thank again to the other person and participant attending the workshop, the facilitator, and all the Luxembourgish organization.
So my name is Gabriel Johansson. I'm from Sweden, and I was in the 5th workshop where we talked about developing democratic tools for involving young people. And we had two recommendations that we were talking about. One was about educating teachers to how to use the tools and which tools are accessible. The other one was about involving young people in the development of the tools. And also that it should be a balance between using online and offline tools. During the workshops, we split into 3 different groups. One handling the recommendation about teachers, and I wasn't really involved in that one. So I was more talking about actually how we're supposed to involve young people in the development of different tools. And we talked about both bringing young people before the development of the tools and also during and after the tools. And once the tools are finished, we wanted to have every user to have the ability to leave feedback, both on the tool itself and also on the content within the tool. And that was the main part. We also wanted to have ways of including people from diverse backgrounds with different identities, but mainly people who would not naturally have a hard time using the tool, either because they can't access the digital tools needed, to the equipment needed, or mainly because they don't have the skills or are used to using online tools. And that we wanted to solve by having support, people that could support them in using the tools. And we thought that maybe other young people that are used to using the online tools could help each other. So if there is one young people not used to using the online tools, or maybe have some different reasons for not being able to use the tools as normal, we wanted to have support people in place. And the last part was about incentives. It was about how do we get different organizations, different policymakers to use these tools and create these tools. And we talked about both lobbying to policymakers, but also about subsidies and changing the laws and the criteria for getting subsidies to involve young people in different processes and development of tools and development of different in the tools and in the different policy makings. And that was the main part of that. And the other part of that recommendation was more about how to teach policymakers how to use online tools. So we realized that policymakers need to understand which online tools exist and how to use them. And that was the other part of that recommendation.
The EU institutions and member states should collaborate on improving or initiate the existing collaborations between cross-sectorial groups, contact groups, by appointing, first of all, a contact person to whichever group affecting who are involving with young people's policies or policies that are affecting young people's lives. Also, all these contact groups should be in contact, of course, by informing and gathering all the information from their parts and giving them and spread the word of what are they doing, of course, by the policies are affecting young people's lives. And then they should also use structured dialogue structures between the working groups and the contact groups to improve the use of the tool as a tool. But still, if people are talking about structured dialogue as a tool, they need to use it first. And then they could be able better and in better place to discuss about that. Secondly, our workshop was starting improving about the youth impact assessment. Everybody should collaborate on that, and European Commission can set the ground for each member state to improve the original text, and also to help the implementation, because this is the part that we're talking now about, creating this toolbox for the structured dialogue for the implementation of all the recommendations that have been discussed in the past. So yeah.